In today's video, I am going to teach you how to group dates into months and quarters in pivot tables. If your pivot table currently shows dates at a daily level, it can be hard to scan trends. Grouping dates into larger time buckets makes your summary much easier to understand, especially when you want to compare performance across months or across quarters. To begin, you will work directly within your existing pivot table. Click any cell inside your existing pivot table data field grid area. This tells Excel that you are actively working with that pivot table, so the date field options will show up correctly when you use the right-click menu. Take a moment to make sure you are clicking within the pivot table body, not outside of it. You should see the familiar grid layout of your pivot table in the background. Next, you will open the grouping options. Right-click any date value cell that is listed inside your row or column field. This step matters because grouping applies to the specific date field that you choose to right-click. For example, if your dates appear along the rows, right-click a date value there. If your dates appear along the columns instead, right-click a date value in the column area. In either case, you should right-click a cell that actually contains a date label, not a summary total that might not be grouped. After you right-click, a contextual menu will appear. From that pop-up menu, select Group. This selection is what activates the time grouping window for the selected date field. If you do not see the group option, it is often because the cell you clicked is not part of a date field, or because you did not click within the pivot table layout. For best results, make sure you are right-clicking the date items themselves. Now that you have opened the grouping dialog, you will choose how you want to bucket the dates. Look for the selection box list in the grouping window, and click to highlight both months and quarters in the selection box list. You may notice that the dialog can offer multiple grouping choices depending on the date range and the data type. In this case, you specifically want month and quarter groupings, because that will collapse the daily records into larger, more readable categories. Once both months and quarters are selected, you will apply the changes. Click OK to instantly collapse your daily records into time buckets. This is the moment where the pivot table reorganizes itself. The individual day labels should disappear, replaced by month names and quarter labels based on how Excel groups the field. Your row or column structure will be summarized into those larger time periods, making patterns easier to spot. After the pivot table updates, take a quick look to confirm that the grouping worked the way you intended. You should see dates no longer listed one by one. Instead, your pivot table should show months and quarters as the grouped categories, depending on where your date field is placed in the rows or columns. If you had dates on the rows, you should see grouped time periods appear along the row axis. If dates were on the columns, you should see grouped time periods appear across the columns. At this point, you have successfully grouped your dates into meaningful time buckets without changing your underlying data. This approach helps your pivot table stay readable and makes it much easier to analyze trends across both months and quarters. That covers everything you need to know, and that is all there is to it.